Campaigners say new government plans to speed up the removal of unsafe cladding from high-rise buildings don't go far enough. The programme began after the Grenfell Tower fire in 2017, but only a third of tower blocks have been fixed and many haven't been identified. Ministers say they're committed to a serious and ambitious target of completing the work by 2029.
Now, at 12:05, the government's announced new plans to speed up the removal of unsafe cladding on high-rise buildings, including target dates and tougher penalties for refusing to act. So buildings higher than 18 metres, with dangerous cladding covered by government-funded schemes will be fixed by the end of 2029. By that same date, unsafe cladding in buildings which are taller than 11 metres should either be fixed or have a date for completion. Otherwise, landlords will face penalties. So the push to remove certain types of cladding from buildings was triggered, of course, by the 2017 Grenfell Tower fire, and that killed 72 people. I can talk to Rachael Loftus from Leeds, who lives in a flat with dangerous cladding and is part of the group End Our Cladding Scandal. Hello, Rachael.
Hi.
Hi. I've got Dr. Jonathan Evans as well, a facade and cladding expert and chief executive of facade and roof manufacturer Ash Lacy. Jonathan, Dr. Evans, hello.
Hello there.
Hello. Rachael, where are you at in terms of your flat and the state of the building it's in and cladding?
Yeah, so I first found out that the cladding and the insulation on my building weren't fire safe in January 2020. And since then, not a single piece of cladding or insulation has been removed. We're still waiting for my building owners to do what they keep promising to do, which is to make my building safe. We did go to court earlier this year, but the first date we got was we were successful in our application to tell them that they needed to get a move on, but that will be November of next year before we can go back to court if they don't do what they say. And to be honest, up to this point, they've never done anything that they've said. So now we're completely stuck and we're still waiting, and my life is still in limbo.
How much has this cost you? I know it's not just about money,
Yeah.
and I will talk about the actual impact on your life, but how much has this cost you and the other residents so far?
Yeah, so me personally, it's in the tens of thousands of pounds now, because it's so hard to even calculate anymore. But we spent, I spent £8,000 just in interim measures. So that was, to have two people stand and watch the building. That's what was put in place in January 2020, because it was deemed to be so unsafe. We then got alarms put in, which cost me about £4,000. My insurance charge is now 10 times what it was in 2019. My service charge is 6 times what it was in 2019, all because of the potential risk to my building. And like you say, I can't even tell you what it's cost me in terms of hours of my life,
Stress.
Learning and understanding, stress, following up phone calls, emails that don't get responded to, having to understand what's going on, and just not having any power in the situation. And I think that's what we were really looking for today in the government announcement, is that powerlessness that leaseholders feel, I think we still feel after today's announcement.
Do you think that this announcement will make you feel more empowered?
Oh, look, at this point, any date is better than the limbo that I've been living in. But I can tell you that I have listened to government announcements for the last 5 years, and each time it's promised me an end to this, and it hasn't happened yet. So there's nothing in today's announcement that really gives me that genuine hope that the people that the government are reliant on to make this happen, which are the building owners.
So it's not
industry,
the government, it's the people. Yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, the government's made an announcement, but it's dependent on the very people who caused this problem. So they're asking the same people who chose profit over people every time to change their ways, and there's nothing really that's going to force them at the moment. It's you'll get on a naughty list. That's the limit of what they're asking. These people who've genuinely, they could have chosen safer materials and didn't. They could have built in safer ways but didn't. They could have acted sooner and they haven't. And these are the people that we're asking to do the right thing. And I'm just not confident that even with the government asking them that they're going to do it.
Okay. Dr. Jonathan Evans, you're a facade and cladding expert, chief executive of facade and roof manufacturer Ash Lacy. Hello. Is there anything you need to kind of declare in terms of your cladding being related to any of this?
Not specifically, no.
Okay, fine. No, it's always good to know because I think our viewers, are entitled to know which angle you're coming from. Shall we pick up on what Rachel was saying in terms of the manufacturers being put on this naughty list and not kind of really feeling obliged to help? What do you know in terms of how manufacturers or institutions, companies are feeling in terms of obligation?
Well, there are a lot of steps in the supply chains, and manufacturers tend to be, if you like, a little bit polarized. Some, for instance, would specialize in making non-combustible materials. Others will make, for example, polymeric insulation products. It's been a big change, I think, since Grenfell. There's been a big rush, of course. All of those manufacturers who were inclined to produce combustible materials, for instance, now due to the regulations and guidance, they're all offering non-combustible alternatives.
Are they? Sorry, go on.
But the main initiative from the government's point of view has to get the developers to sign up for the remediation of what they were responsible for building. And I think that's largely taken care, if you like, of that in terms of who is responsible for designing buildings and getting them built in a certain way. There are options, as Rachel rightly said. There are, people chose to put these materials on buildings, and the government has basically, through Michael Gove's initiatives in particular, very much singled out. It was the people who built the buildings that were responsible for the situations that they're in.
Yeah, that doesn't really help Rachel, though, does it now? Because it just seems that they're just battling against a series of people, all of who, well, not all, but some of whom just go, not me, it was them, down, move it further down the line.
And the manufacturers can't help Rachel either, other than try to develop more cost-effective solutions that aren't combustible. And I think that's very much been the case in the last few years. So there was a lot of resistance, for instance. In fact, I think people would be surprised that a lot of companies that specialize in non-combustible materials face enormous resistance from the regulators and so on to increase the standards to which buildings are built.
And why is that? What kind of is the message you're getting from the regulators? Who are they trying to? I say protect, and I don't mean that in a litigious way.
Well, this is my opinion, but there are a number of stakeholders who aren't fond of buildings that have no risk associated with them. So, for instance, if every building was very easy to manufacture out of non-combustible materials and make safe, it completely collapses quite a number of issues, such as fire risk insurance, for instance. Is anybody going to still buy insurance premiums for fire if they're very confident that the building can't burn and so on? So the government is lobbied by a number of parties. When people, for instance, I sit on British Standards Committee, and if I try to argue that actually making buildings safe is as simple as building them out of non-combustible materials, it's quite a shock to see how many people don't agree with that.
What would your advice be to someone like Rachel now? Now you kind of hear the process she's going through, because at the moment I feel, and Rachel, jump in, tell me if I'm wrong, but Rachel is just like battling.
I was going to say, I can say that.
Sorry, Rachel. You go, and then we'll get Jonathan.
It just feels like quite a typical response from an industry, because actually you said there's nothing the manufacturers can do. Actually, they could recall their products. They could offer alternatives at cost. What they're doing is profiting from the replacement of materials that they supplied in the first place. This is an industry that has made record profits since Grenfell. Since the death of 72 people, these companies continue to make money both on the unsafe products that they sold and now the replacement products that they're selling. And I think that's a disgrace. And then the idea that you say that there's nothing that manufacturers can do. I'm genuinely shocked that you would even come on a programme and say that out loud.
Okay. Jonathan's representing one manufacturer, but Jonathan, please come back.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think I was fully in favour, for instance, for the companies that marketed these products, of which I'm not one of them. And I I kind of object to being categorized in the same way as, we didn't have a single building over 18 meters with our products on that was remediated. So there are good people in this industry trying to do their best, we're known for campaigning against combustible materials. But one of the things I was really disappointed with was that Michael Gove wanted to ban the companies that were responsible for the materials on Grenfell, and was told by the Treasury that would be a difficult international trade situation and possibly illegal. So, but I don't think that will help Rachel, and the actual the obstacles that she's facing in getting her building remediated, I don't think are down to the manufacturers. I think they're down to the builders and taking responsibility, and also huge disagreements in what the remediation actually is required to be. And one thing you can guarantee with the fire engineering industry, and it's probably no exception, is if you get one report from the residents and one report from the building owners on what needs to be done, they won't agree.
Is there a division then? You alluded to this. I just want to kind of clear this up. Is there a division in the industry about the kind of, I don't want to say pro-combustible materials, but that side, and the ones like you say you're part of, which aren't?
Yes, massive. And it's not just the manufacturers as well. So on all these committees, you will get representatives for the fire services. And again, a contentious opinion might be that I don't believe that the fire services, if you look at the submissions for the consultations, you won't find the fire brigades, the London Fire Brigade particularly, recommending increased restrictions on the use of combustible materials. Buildings that don't burn or have a risk of burning isn't good news for the fire services. And in my opinion, I wanted to see a society where the fire services actually was reduced and limited to getting cats out of trees, if you like. But that's not what the fire services want to campaign for. So, and I've sat in a meeting, and I do sympathise with Rachel, but I've sat in a meeting with a ex-head of a fire service who's recommended the government, there's no need to make buildings non-combustible because we will save people. And he literally, and I sat there and I said to him, well, your memory's very short because you didn't save everybody in June.
And I will be careful here because I can't ask the fire service to confirm or, they don't have a right of reply in this conversation. But I get the gist of what you're saying, that you feel there are various bodies, various elements to this complicated, well, it's not complicated, but to this kind of arrangement, of who may, in your opinion, are absolving themselves of some responsibility or excusing those manufacturers. Rachel, when you hear this, I mean, and this divide particularly, I mean, it doesn't really help you, but the conversation that's going on, I mean, for me, and I'm not party to this kind of situation, but is slightly encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're hearing here is exactly why the government needs to get a grip of this situation, because there are competing interests. And from my point of view, every one of those competing interests has got, a Department of Law and a Department of Media, and I'm just somebody who's trying to live in a home safely. So in that sense, it's a really good example of all of those competing interests, and actually government. What we're looking for in a remediation action plan is government to come down and actually say, no, that this is not good enough. We need safe homes. We need, we need people to feel safe. We need people to be able to sell their homes and move on with their lives. We need the people who buy those homes to have confidence so that they're buying a safe home. That's what we need from government. What we don't need is more people to tell us why it's complicated or why their particular industry, should or shouldn't be responsible for it. Every single person who's in the supply chain for these materials should be invested in people being safe at the end of the line. I've sat with fire service, professionals who've said, what the last thing they want to have to do is actually walk into a building and carry someone out. That's, we should be designing in safety. That should be only in the, absolute extreme cases that should we be thinking about people being rescued from a fire, because we talk about the 72 people who lost their lives in Grenfell Tower, but, people lost all of their possessions, every single photograph they ever took. They lost all of their clothes. People's real lives live in these homes. They're not units. They're not buildings. Buildings don't have feelings, but people who live in them do. And I think that, for me, is completely missing from this plan, that it should be centred around making homes safe. Who needs to do that? How can we make it happen? And I do think there is an absolute gap where experts should be making these decisions. It shouldn't be industry marking its own homework. It shouldn't be people who've got vested interests saying what solutions should be in place. It should be people, and and if your solutions are the best ones and they've got you've got the best products, that they will be the ones that are being used. But you shouldn't be the one. If you're selling a product, you shouldn't be the one deciding on whether that goes into my home or not. It should be somebody who genuinely has knowledge and understanding of how to make my home safe and every single other home. And if we're building more homes, we really need to make them very safe.
I am going to finish this conversation, although what I would say in response to that is you want those people who are manufacturing to be on board in terms of being invested in producing those materials and, competing with each other to do this. So they having a say at the table, kind of, that's what I do disagree with you there. I think it's going to only be useful.
I think there's somebody at the Grenfell inquiry said, you shouldn't be in this industry if you don't have safety at your heart, and I agree with that. I want industry
Jonathan,
to be leading safety.
That's a fair statement, isn't it? Have safety at the heart of what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. But if I may say what I think the solution is, rather than
of
what
course, yes, and then I will finish this conversation. But please do.
I've argued from the outset that really the key to this, as always, is money. The government should pay now, sort these buildings out, and then they can recover this money. Don't leave it to the courts and the residents and so on. The government should pay now, make people safe, and then go after the people that were responsible in the first place. That's the only way to hit these deadlines.
I fully agree with that.
There we go. We ended on agreement. Not that I mind disagreement at all, because it makes for a good... It makes us all think a little bit more carefully, and I always enjoy that. Rachael Loftus, look, Rachael, we've spoken before. It is a kind of hell you're going through. I'm sorry, but thank you so much for articulating it so well so that we do understand. Good luck. Part of the group End Our Cladding Scandal. Dr. Jonathan Evans, facade and cladding expert, chief executive of facade and roof manufacturer Ash Lacy. Thank you very much for your contribution as well and your thoughts and the insights into the industry as well. Thank you.